Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves as star-faring species taking the first few steps into a new galaxy. We'll be finding new stars, exploring new worlds, collecting valuable resources like energy, and securing allies to gain the most ground in our expanding empires. We'll also be building colonies and resource collectors to hold on to control in various and increasingly crowded star systems. Horizons is for 2 to 5 players, plays in 60 to 75 minutes, ages 14 and up, and is published by Daily Magic Games. Today I'll be doing a rule school where I'm going to teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now I've placed timestamps just below me in the description of this video, just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Well, without further ado, let's get started. Horizons is an action selection, resource management, and engine building game where you'll be exploring all different new worlds around stars. You'll be adapting to new worlds and allowing yourselves to build on those. And you'll be building metal collectors, energy collectors, or even powerful colonies on those worlds to help you with control of the entire system. You'll also be getting help by different allies that will trigger on different actions that you take. And you'll be secretly trying to complete different missions for the end game scoring. And you'll be trying to gain big points at the end for having control of different systems. So it's all about managing your resources to spend to build, which will build an engine of getting more resources to build bigger and better things like colonies to give you control at the end to give you lots of points. Each player has their own board, but you can play on the advanced side, which gives you a new character, and it gives you different asymmetrical ways to play the game. To set up, each player is going to select one of these 5-player boards. If you're playing with less than 5 players, the ones not selected can be placed back in the box. Once you've selected your board, place it in front of you. Now for your first game, you're going to want to make sure to place the board on the side that has this white star in the upper left. The other side of this board does not have this. You want to make sure it has this star. This is going to be the best experience for your first game. Next, you're going to find the wooden components in this box that match these types of shapes and that are in the color of your board, and you're going to place them in these corresponding spots matching the shapes. And so it might look like this. Next, you'll find the corresponding active world markers that look like this, matching the color of your board. You're going to put one above each of these worlds that you see here. Make sure they're above the board, not on them. By the way, these are the cardboard components, and all of the cardboard components in this game are found on punch boards that are actually underneath the insert of the box. So make sure you take out this black insert and look underneath to find all the punch boards to get all the cardboard components from. Next, you're going to locate the 5 starter ally cards. Now these cards are green on one side and red on the other side. They all say Exploration League, and they're all exactly the same. You're going to give one of these cards to each player. If you're playing with less than 5 players, you can return the unused ones back to the box. Next, you'll find the mission deck that looks like this. You're going to go through all of these cards, and you're going to take out any of the cards that has a player count that you're not playing with. So if you're playing with less than 5 players, you take out all the cards that say 5+. If you're playing with less than 3, you take out all the cards that say 3+, 4+, and 5+, and so on. So you'll remove the cards for the player counts that you're not using. With the cards that are left, you're going to shuffle this deck up, and you're going to deal 2 cards face down to each player. Now the rest of that deck will go off to the side. You'll use it throughout the game. The 2 cards that are there, obviously this player can look at them, but they do not want to reveal them to the players. We're not going to go over what these cards do yet. We'll handle that at the end of this video in the final scoring once you know more about the game. Next, you'll make piles for the different resources of the game off to the side, but still where people can reach them. These purple ones are called knowledge tokens. This is energy, and these are metal. You can also separate out the victory point tokens. These can be placed off to the side though, because you won't be using them until the end of the game. You're going to give every player 1 knowledge, 2 energy, and 2 metal. You'll also give each player a player aid. It has scoring on one side, which will tell you how the game scores, and on the other side it has icons, which shows you what all the icons are throughout the game through the iconography on some of the cards. Now, if you're playing with less than 5 players, like we are today, you can actually have some of you have both of these here just for convenience. Next, you're going to find the 5 star tiles. You're going to begin creating the board out in the middle of the table. Now you can tell that these are the right tiles because on both sides they have the same emblem and they all look like this, and these are the stars. You're going to put out 1 star tile for each player. You're going to find all 5 of them, and in this case, let's just say we're playing with 3 players, so we would take these 2 and remove them and put them back in the box. These other 3 we're going to set up now. Now you want to set these up in the middle of the table, but you want to ensure that there's enough room left between any and all of the star tiles. Over the course of the game, there's going to be tiles placed around each of these stars, creating a system. And these systems must be kept separate. Now, we would not be using stars for these, but I'm just showing you this for the tiles. You want to make sure that there'll be a tile that can fit all the way around each of these stars without any of those tiles attached to it touching any of the other systems. And again, these star tiles are removed back in the box, and right now we have 3 because we have 3 players. I say about 8 to 10 inches is perfect for keeping them separated from each other. Now, below those stars, still in the middle of the board, but far enough down that they're not going to conflict with any possible tiles go around those stars, you're going to lay out the 5 different piles of these ally cards. So what you'll do is you'll find them in the left side, you'll see an icon. You're going to take the cards with all the same icon and place them in a pile. So all of these cards will have this specific icon on it. And so you'll put them in the like piles, you'll shuffle these piles up, and then you'll place them just like this so that there are 5 piles just like that. Each pile has 6 cards of the same icon. Next, you're going to take all of the world tiles. Now these world tiles are double-sided and they have different worlds on each side. You're going to take all of these tiles and place them in this black draw bag. Keep in mind, you do not want to include any possible star tiles that you removed from the game during setup when playing with less than 5 players. Next, randomly assign someone to be the first player. That player is going to take the draw bag and randomly take out 1 world tile from there. They can use either side of this tile, and they're going to connect it to one of these stars. And you'll connect it showing the connection here. So let's say I wanted to connect this here. I would just simply do it like this. Then they're going to take their active world marker and place it so it's on the board just around the world that they just placed. This is their first active world, and you're only doing this when placing tiles in setup. The bag will then be passed to the next player clockwise. That player will also take a tile from that bag, and they will choose which side they want up. They will then connect this to a star that does not have a world tile around it. So let's say they do this. Now that player is also going to place one of those active world markers on their board, as I just showed you, but in this case, they get to choose either of these 2 to place as their active world. And you'll continue doing this, passing the bag so that each player has randomly picked a tile, picked a side, and connected it to a star that does not have a world tile around it. But again, after the first player does this, all the other players, when they place this, they can move the active world marker for any of the worlds that are out there on their board, as I showed previously. The object of the game is to have the most points at the end, and you're going to be scoring at the end of the game for completing missions for different points. We'll go over the details of these missions later. Remember, these are secret. Also, for each one of these knowledge tokens you have, you'll get points. And you'll also be getting points at the end for having majority control or minority control of systems that are out on the board. The flow of the game is very simple. On your turn, you're going to simply take any 2 actions. You can take the same action twice, or you can take different actions, and after you're done with those 2 actions, it will just pass clockwise, and you'll continue taking turns like this throughout the game. So let's go over some of these actions. The first one we'll talk about is called Explore. To explore, you're going to take the draw bag, you're going to randomly take, without looking, one of the tiles, and you're going to select either side of this, and you're going to add it to any star that doesn't already have 6 tiles around it, meaning it's full. So I can place this, let's just say, like this. Now, after you do that, you always get 1 knowledge marker that you'll place in front of you with your other resources. And for example, if this star already had all these tiles around it, you cannot add one to this because you can never add a tile to another world tile. They always get connected to a star. Now, if all of the stars are completely full, having world tiles all around it, you can still take this action to gain a knowledge if you'd like to. The next action we'll talk about is Adapt. This allows you to activate one of your world markers and take an ally card. So you can select any of these that are off your board and place it on a specific world type. So now these 2 are considered active for me, which means I can build on those, which I'll show you in just a moment. But now we're going to take an ally card, so let's talk more about those. So when you take an ally card, you can take the top one of any of these 5 stacks. Now if you don't want to take the top one, but you still want to take a card, you can discard the top one of any stack, but then you have to take the newly revealed one. Anytime you discard one of these non-starter ally cards, like let's say this one, it goes to the bottom of that specific pile. But in this case, I discard it, so I must take this top one and add it to my display now. And of course, you could have just taken the top one of any of those without doing that. So now I have 2 ally cards, one I've just gotten and my starter one. We're going to talk about how these work in just a moment, but let's show you the next action to show you how these trigger. Now keep in mind that we've just taken 2 actions, and normally it would be the next player's turn clockwise, but we're going to just pretend it's back to our turn because I'm going to run through all of the actions here. So let's try the build action. Now this tells us that we can build one of any of the 3 structure types, and these match the shapes that are here. So we have energy collectors, metal collectors, and colonies as written on the board. Now to build, we'll look at any of the active worlds. Those are the only ones you can build on. So right now, these are the only 2 I can build on, and I could build either one of these metal collectors or a colony, but it shows you how much resources you need to spend. This one needs I spend 1 energy and 1 metal. Same for this one as well, where the other ones are a little bit more expensive for each of the resources. And you only start with certain resources I showed you. So let's build one of these metal collectors on the frozen world. So in this case, I would spend 1 energy and 1 metal, and I would place it back to the supplies, and then I would be able to build one of these out there. Now when you build, you'll notice each world has 3 little spots, and you can build any structure on those spots. So in this case, I'll just put it right there because that was the frozen world that I built on. Now normally this card would have been off to the side, but I brought it over here to show you that the icon that matches this card that would activate this ally matches the action that I just took, which was build. So anytime you take an action, if you have an ally card that matches that, you can activate 1 ally card, and you could do it in any order. You can actually take the action first and then activate this, which is what we just did now, or you could say you're taking the build action, activate 1 ally card with it, and then do the action. The order is up to you. So let's look at this card a little bit more. So this says I can either gain 2 more ally cards or 5 metal. Now again, you could have done this first before the actual build action, and that 5 metal could have been used to pay for something if you had the other resources that you were able to do it, and assuming that you were actually able to build on that. But that's to show you can do it in either order. Now after you do that, you can only trigger 1 of the ally cards with that icon per action. But when you do that, you look here. If the card is green, it's going to have a flip symbol. So after you flip it, it would go like this. Then on a subsequent turn, if you activate this again, this card is red to tell you it's going to go away afterwards. So in this case, after you do this, you would then discard it. That's what that symbol is. And remembering that discarding these non-starter allies always puts this to the bottom of the stack of that respectable pile. So if I had already used this, it was on a subsequent turn, and I used this again, we would discard it by placing it green side up at the bottom of that stack. However, everyone's starter ally card works a little different. When you activate it, you'll still activate the text and you'll flip it, but then next time you'll see instead of an X discard, it's a trash. So all of the starter ally cards, when you flip them over because you've used them once and you trigger it again, this gets completely removed from the game and back in the box. Now I'm not going to go over what all these cards do because they are quite self-explanatory, especially when looking at the icon player aid. Another note about ally cards is that you can take an action and not even be able to do that actual action just to trigger a card, like before with the Explore action. And if all of the stars were completely full, we couldn't add a world tile to it, that's okay. You'd still take the knowledge token as I showed you, but you can also still activate the card. So sometimes you can take an action and not actually do the action, but specifically just trigger the ally card that's tied to that action. Another action you can take is Harvest. This allows you to gain 1 energy for each energy collector in play, which are these, and 1 metal for each metal collector that you have in play. So at this point in the game, it's early and I only have 1 metal collector and that's it for those structures, so I would simply collect 1 metal from the supply and place it in front of me. Keep in mind when harvesting, you can quickly look at your own board and see how many resources of each energy and metal you'll get without having to look at all the different stars and worlds and see where you have structures and how many there are. Now remember, you're only taking 2 actions, and you can take the same action twice or 2 different ones, then it's the next player's turn. Well, let's talk about the last action, Conspire. You can either draw 2 mission cards or 1 ally card, which we've already showed you, and 1 mission card. You can do it in any order. So first you can draw 1 mission card, you would secretly look at it, and you've got it. And then you would decide to draw a second mission card or an ally card as we showed previously. So as you can see, over the course of the game, you're going to be activating different worlds, placing and building things there, gathering resources from those, maybe some of the smaller ones, and then slowly building up to be able to put your colonies out there. And those colonies are important because, well, first of all, it triggers the end of the game. When any one player places their last colony, it ends the game immediately. But it's also going to help you a lot for the final game scoring, which is trying to have majority control of different systems. So let's talk about that now. Keep in mind, the game ends when any player places their last colony, then you immediately go to scoring. The first thing you'll do, as shown on the player aid, is to score points for your completed missions. At that point, you would reveal your missions and say whether you completed them or not. Again, I'm not going to go over these now, but there is the icon player aid, which will help you understand all of these cards, and the back of the rulebook also has all the different icons on there. So if you do complete these, you'd get the points here. Now, when you gain points, you can use the tokens that we set aside at the beginning of the game, just like that. Or for these cards, you can decide to also just flip over the ones that you didn't complete and keep them face up for the ones that you did complete and just count the points and the numbers there. Requirements are like have 10 or more resources, or build 1 or more energy collectors on every system, or build 4 or more colonies and have 8 or more resources, those types of things. You'll also score 1 point for each of these knowledge tokens that you actually have, and again, you can either use the tokens that have the points, or you can just simply count these as 1 point each. Then you're going to go to each of the systems, and again, a system is a star with world tiles around it. And there's always going to be 1 system per player. In this case, 3 players, you'd go through each of the 3 systems. We're just going to show you one for example. You'd go through each one of these, and you'd give points for majority and minority control. Now, as shown in the table above, and on the final scoring card, you're going to give a certain amount of control based upon what's out there. Each player is going to get 1 point of control for each metal collector and energy collector, but 2 points for each of the colonies you have out there. So in this case, the pink player has 2, 4, 5, 6. The white player has 2, 3, 4, 5, and the green player has 2. So based upon this table, the majority control player pink would get 6 points, and the minority control player white would get 3 points. And this is when for sure you would use these tokens that you set aside at the beginning of the game to give yourself these points. However, let's say this player did not have that energy collector. So now pink has 2, 4, 5, and white has 2, 3, 4, 5. They're tied for first place for majority control. And in this case, they each get 3 points as shown in the tied majority in this table. And when the tied majority happens, the minority player gets no points. However, if it looked like this, the pink player clearly has majority with 2, 4, 5, 6. But the minority is tied. 2 for white because it's a colony, and 2 because they have a metal collector and an energy collector for green. Now when they're tied, as shown in the table above, tied minority gets them 1 point each. You would score each of the systems out on the board just as I showed here. Now, it's different if you're playing a 2-player game. You won't score each system as a whole, you'll score each world tile in the entire game that's connected to any star individually. And each world tile is going to give 1 point if you control that world tile, and control is the same way. In this case, pink has 2, 3 of control on this world, green has 1, so pink would control this world and get 1 point. You always just get 1 point for each world tile that you control. So pink would get another point here, white would get a point here, and green would get a point for that one. You'd do this for every world tile out on the board. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. If it's tied, the player with the most total resources, and resources are energy and metal, not knowledge. If it's still tied, the player with the most points derived by your completed mission cards would win, and if it's still a tie, then all tied players share the victory. Now, if you remember, we set up everybody in your beginner game with this star like this. But once you're familiar with the game, you can flip these over and each player has a different character and it's asymmetrical. So what you need to use to build on different things are completely different from everyone else. And some of the actions may change. Like this one, you can see you don't build colonies here, but to build, you can pay any 7 and build 1 on a star, but a max 3 per star. So you can see that different boards have different things. And again, they're all going to be asymmetrical. So we flip over and look at another board. And again, everything is going to be different and they have some different actions as well. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Horizons and get to the fun quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have any further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask them, because not only will I be able to answer it, but so will Daily Magic Games. This has been the Game Boy Geek, helping you find and enjoy the next board game you'll love.